We're opening up into the Gospel of Matthew. It's the 22nd chapter, and we start with the 34th verse. Jesus has been holding audience with Sadducees and Pharisees. When the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest? Jesus said to him, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. And a second is like it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Now, while the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them this question: What do you think of the Messiah? Whose son is he? They said to him, The son of David. He said to them, How is it then that David, by the Spirit, calls him Lord, saying, The Lord said to my Lord, Sit at my right hand until I put your enemies under your feet? If David thus calls him Lord, how can he be his son? No one was able to give him an answer, nor from that day did anyone dare to ask him any more questions. This morning, we will meet the Sadducees and the Pharisees. The Sadducees as a group were mostly Jewish priests. The Pharisees were mostly rabbis. Speaking of rabbis, this reminds me of a story. And so we're going to go to the mythical kingdom of the Trids. Please do not look for them on any map available to you, either in your computer or in your atlas. This is a kind of parable. And so the Trids lived in a small valley at the bottom of a mountain. In the middle of the valley was a beautiful little village. Every year, the people called Trids would plant beautiful crops and attend to wonderful pastures. But every year, a giant would come down the mountain and stomp on their crops and carry off the best of their sheep and cattle. So each year, the village elders would nominate someone to go up the mountain to talk to the giant. That lucky individual would have the unfortunate task of pleading with the giant not to ruin the harvest. The giant would invite the delegate to sit on his front porch and listen to the delegate's appeal. After the valley dweller would plead the case for Tridville, Please leave our harvest alone, the giant would rise up and kick the delegate off the front porch and down the mountain. The giant would lay waste to the harvest once again. Then one year, a rabbi came to the village in the valley of the Trids. It was almost harvest time. All the people of the village decided, This is the person to go talk to the giant. This is a rabbi. Rabbis can talk to God. Surely they can talk to a giant. They explained the problem to the rabbi. They warned the rabbi, If you do not succeed, the giant may kick you off the porch and down the mountain. The rabbi, wanting to do right for God and neighbor, agreed to go up the mountain and talk to the giant. The rabbi went up the mountain, and he found the giant just as it was described to him. And the giant, recognizing the rabbi in rabbi clothes, said, What? No Trids this year? The rabbi said, They sent me because they thought you might listen better. The giant said, All right, have a seat, and they sat on the porch. The rabbi gave his best appeal for letting the Trids keep their harvest. After the rabbi was done pleading for Tridville, the giant said, No, I am sorry, I cannot leave the harvest alone. And the rabbi covered his head and crouched, waiting for the giant to give him a good swift kick down the mountain. But no kick ever came. And so the rabbi looked up and said, Well, aren't you going to kick me off the porch? And the giant said, Silly rabbi, don't you know kicks are for Trids? Okay, if you can recover from that parable, yes, we are going to talk about rabbis today. But we are not going to talk that much about kicks. No, we are going to talk about God's love. That is today's commanding question. The Pharisees want to know what is the greatest commandment. We are going to look at this. Let us be clear. What is a Pharisee or a Sadducee? They are both schools of Jewish thought. The Pharisees and Sadducees both formed in 167 BC. After 140 years of control by the Greek Empire, the Greek king Antiochus IV decided to turn the Jews into Greeks. So Antiochus, like an ornery giant, started kicking against Judaism. One group of Jewish priests felt they should appease the Greeks and be less Jewish. These would become the Sadducees. Another group of Jewish leaders, mostly rabbis, felt this was a bad idea. These would become the Pharisees. Then King Antiochus IV became totally impatient. He kicked the Jewish priests out of the temple and put Greek statues in the Holy of Holies. This led to instant rebellion. The Jews began ambushing the Greek army. The total chaos was avoided when Antiochus died of an apparent heart attack. The next king decided turning Jews into Greeks was a bad idea. But the Sadducees and Pharisees continued to get on each other's nerves for 200 years. When the Romans took over from the Greeks, the Sadducees and Pharisees continued in the same role. It was these groups that were asking Jesus all these questions. It is the Pharisees who asked today's question, what is the greatest commandment? And Jesus gives the answer that has been the heart of Judaism and Christianity all this time. Love God, love neighbor. Jesus did not say that the Sadducees are not the greatest, and Jesus did not say the Pharisees are either or the greatest. No, what Jesus was saying to both groups was, let's remember our purpose. Our purpose is to love God. Our purpose is to love each other. Our loyalty is not to a school of thought. Our loyalty is not to the Sadducees' favorite bylaws, and it is not to the Pharisees' favorite bylaws. If we forget to love God, if we forget to love each other, someday a giant is going to kick us off this mountain. Mount Zion will no longer have a temple on top of it. God's people will no longer be able to worship there. This is a warning to Christianity. If we want to believe in a school of thought, we could lose our rabbi. We could lose Jesus. Not a Pharisee, not a Sadducee. We could lose Jesus. Jesus reminds us of our purpose. Our purpose is not to be more Greek. We are not supposed to be more Roman. We do not follow a school of thought. We follow a teacher sent by God. We follow Jesus. We follow lesson number 1, love God, love our neighbor. It is not complicated. It says, stop kicking each other. The mountain belongs to God. The valley belongs to God. Life is not a big game of king of the hill. God is our king. God is already on the mountaintop. God is not there to kick us. God is there to love us. That is the commanding question. God sent Jesus not to kick us, but to heal us, to teach us a better way. Amen.